going to waste any time introducing Jamil because hopefully you read the bio. He is the director of the Department of Internet Ministries for the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America. With that, I'm going to give him all of his time. Let's welcome Jamil.
Hi, everyone. This is a nice crowd. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I'm going to ask, if you're up for it, if you're going to use your phones to take notes or whatever, feel free to use them. But I'm going to challenge you all to hit the power buttons right now. Not just turn it on silent, but actually disconnect. We're doing it. We're venturing into the unknown. Shut them off. Take your Fitbits off. You're not taking any, there's no steps. Okay. Is it not?
Quadruple check.
Okay, good. How does everyone feel? You never turn it on? You never turn it off? Just if you can't turn your Apple Watch off, just give it to someone else. Let's disconnect. We say in the Divine Liturgy, right before the Great Entrance, let us lay aside all earthly care. And if our earthly care is not wrapped up in these devices, I don't know what is. So let's try to do it, because I think it's a trivial exercise right now. I want the attention on me. And really, actually, I got a comment from the last session that even though I was talking about the dangers of technology, I was using technology to present. She totally called me out on it. She's totally right. But I want the attention on me in the presentation. So like whatever we can do to eliminate the distractions, let's give it a try. And if we could do it for this hour, then we could do it at other times in our lives. We could leave our phones in our cars when we go to church, maybe, or whatever it is. I'm not sure. Like we could figure out what those spiritual disciplines can be in our own lives. Once we okay, we don't need to give up technology altogether for our entire lives, but maybe we could try for 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So anyway, let us begin. Thank you. I'm the director of the Department of Internet Ministries. I work at the Holy Cross Seminary in Brookline. It's a great opportunity. I've had the chance not only to develop tools and services for the Orthodox Church worldwide. I don't have any books that I wrote, but if you want to download after the session is over, the Daily Readings mobile app, that's the equivalent of buying one of my books. So Daily Readings. Nico Brabilis worked on it as well at one point when he was working in our office. So, and Jason. Oh yeah, wait, where's Jason? Oh, there he is, Jason. Jason also, you'd be supporting his work as well. I didn't even see you there, Jason. All right, here we go. We have a whole lot to cover. I was also called out that I talked too much and didn't give enough chance for discussion. So. Hopefully we're going to have a good chance to discuss, and I encourage you to disagree with me. Share your thoughts. We all have this experience. We're all in this together. It's not like I'm presenting something new for you. So here we go. Today we're going to explore the opportunities and the challenges that technology offers us when it comes to building relationships with friends, family, knowing God and ourselves, and forming community. Though the digital tools we embrace and which surround us claim to create a more connected world, they are in fact a two-edged sword that inhibit connection by creating barriers and false realities, preventing real relationship, self-knowledge, and revelation. The websites, apps, phones, tablets, and more that we've developed to free and assist us, in fact, can actually bind us and lead us to addiction. And case in point, I'll say this right now just to call us all out on this. What I'm saying, you're probably getting distracted from because of, right? Like these images I want to compel with some imagery to complement what I'm saying, but maybe you're not even paying attention to me. Maybe you're paying attention over there. I don't know. So following a brief introduction, we're going to cover our topic in 4 parts. And you'll see this imagery that I'm using. Some is art that people have created. Some are photographs, just different things. Hopefully that will help convey the point further. So we're going to talk about this topic in 4 parts. the psychological implications, the social implications, the spiritual implications, and how do we make sense of it all? What are we going to do about it? Whether we like it or not, digital technology has infiltrated all aspects of our lives. It will continue to integrate further and further over the coming years. We don't have to be afraid to encounter the culture that surrounds us. There are, of course, many benefits in which digital technology offers us, whether it's in the ways we communicate, in medicine, accessing information, and more. Positive use of technology can be a point of baptizing and transforming the world in which we live. I'm sure we could spend this whole hour thinking of the many ways in which technology has simplified our lives, connected us to tools and across boundaries we never thought possible. We could spend the whole hour doing that. But I think for the time that we have, it's more important for us to just touch on some of the ways in which technology divides. And I use that, the term divides very purposefully. As Father Paul pointed out in our last session, the word for the devil, does anyone know the origin of the word devil? Divide. The one who divides, diabolos. And I'm not saying that technology is the devil, but there are ways in which technology divides, and we have to be aware of that. Can any of you relate to any of these scenarios? Perhaps getting distracted by your phone while you're spending time with someone. Maybe using your phone while you're driving. Feeling enslaved to your work email when you're at home or on vacation. Using your phone first thing in the morning or right before bed. Not realizing that someone else is in the room while you stare at your screen. Being on social media while in class or at work when you should be doing something else. Utilizing a screen to occupy a child's time. Or wasting minutes or even hours idly playing games or just scrolling through an infinite list of stuff that really doesn't matter. We can all relate to these things. They speak to our existence in this modern era. But what's the big deal about it? This is just the next step in our technological innovation, in our evolution as humans, right? Maybe not. I'm going to venture to say that our humanity and future is at stake. At every step in human history, our embracing or rejecting of technological advancement has affected who we are and who the next generation will be. For example, the ability to control fire gave Homo erectus the ability to cook, illuminate indoor spaces, create advanced tools, and more. Since then, new advances in tools, food, science, medicine, and more have extended our lives, allowed us to grow taller, stronger, faster, and smarter. Yet technology can also be used for waging war, for harming creation, and for creating division. At every moment of discovery, humans have had time to test that discovery for staying power, to ensure it works to humanity's benefit. Our biology has not, and frankly cannot, keep up with the advances of technology we've experienced in these last few decades. So that takes us to Act 1, the psychological and neurobiological implications. So how is technology dividing us from the inside? In other words, what is technology doing to our brains? So let's begin this section with a little exercise. I'd like for you all to think about, over the next 15, 20 seconds, 10 phone numbers. Phone numbers of friends, family, coworkers. Can you do it? Can you get to 10? Raise your hand if you could reach 10. Less than 10% of the crowd, maybe about 10% of the crowd. Can anyone get 5 to 9? Okay, that's pretty good. All right. Can anyone only get to 3? Anyone? You only know 3 numbers. All right. Can anyone not think of a single phone number? 911 people. That's great. That's great. No, it doesn't. Well, yeah. Some people don't even know their own numbers. Yeah, I'll give you that one. There was once a time when this exercise would not have been difficult. Just within the past 20 years, we have collectively come to a point where our ability to memorize has been compromised by how we use technology. So this is the cover of a book called Glow Kids by Dr. Nicholas Kardaras. If you're interested in this topic, I encourage you to get this book. It's really fascinating. He's spent his career dealing with addiction and most recently with technology addiction. He writes in this book, technology inevitably changes us, and changes always entail some level of loss. Technology allows us to store vast amounts of data in devices smaller than the size of a matchbox, but our own ability to remember has deteriorated rapidly. This is what I like to call Socrates' Lament. So, millennia ago, Socrates bewailed the adoption of writing. He thought humans would somehow lose a part of their humanity by remembering less because the written word was able to remember things for us. Oral tradition is virtually lost to us today. We no longer need to remember anything. Appointments, phone numbers, facts, never mind long passages of texts or family histories, because our devices do all of that work for us now. And like I said, maybe that's okay. Maybe this is just part of our evolution. Maybe it's going to free us up to be able to do more somehow with whatever that next stage in evolution is. I don't know. In every stage of growth, there is loss, but it requires discernment to understand the true value of those moments. What are we really gaining and what are we really losing, and is it worth it? So I'm going to suggest that we're actually not made to have the role of remembering outsourced. It's good for our brains to do the things they were meant to do. Gray matter, the important structural stuff in our brains, and if there's any doctors in the room, you could disagree with me if I don't have my facts straight, but I'm pretty sure of this. Gray matter gets developed as we learn and as we memorize. As the adage goes, if we don't use it, we'll lose it. There are repercussions in the aging brain which are now only beginning to be understood. So perhaps in the outsourcing of this role of remembering, we have indeed succumbed to the lament of Socrates. We'll turn to education. This is Steve Jobs of Apple Computer. Years ago in an interview, Steve Jobs stated, what's wrong with education cannot be fixed with technology. No amount of technology will make a dent. You may know this, he didn't allow his kids to use iPads or iPhones in their home. He knew that the technology which his company proudly created was not appropriate for children. Within the education and the raising of children, we see traditional roles outsourced, thinking that technology will be a better replacement. Are there any teachers in the room or educators of some kind? Yeah, good amount. Allocation for technology overtakes budgets once held by programs that develop social skills, physical activity and strength, life skills, creativity, and imagination. And even in our homes, we rush to buy our kids the latest toys, games, and gadgets, yet some crayons, a blank sheet of paper, and time to imagine, or better yet, a warm, encouraging embrace after time spent together are more often what our kids really need. So we're going to go a little deeper now. Addiction. I'm not going to ask you to share what your vices are, but I know collectively as humans, we all can succumb to things very easily, some more than others. Whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex, food, smoking, gambling, work, exercise, shopping, pornography, video games, the internet, our devices. Perhaps you describe whatever plagues you simply as a habit. There's a fine line, of course, between habits and addictions. And sometimes we may not even be aware, though those around us do. And it's important for us to support one another, you know. We'll get to that a little later on. Digital technology is a drug. The way we use digital technology is exactly, chemically speaking, how drugs interact with us. And we're going to start with one of the tougher ones, internet pornography addiction. Internet pornography addiction is a disease that has infiltrated our lives, our homes, and our loved ones. It acts like any other drug, which hooks its victim and slowly destroys him or her. Our brains respond to the images we see online in the same way as when we take drugs. Chemicals such as dopamine, the feel-good chemical in our brains, are released and are released and tell us that we need to have more of it. It is our body's way of telling the brain that something is good for us and that we should keep doing it. Dr. Al Rossi, a professor of St. Vladimir's Seminary in New York, warns us of the 4 A's specific to internet-based pornography addiction. And that's aside from addiction. So addiction's 1A, and then there's 4 others beside that. Dr. Al Rossi, he has some podcasts and articles online if you're interested in learning more about this. But he says the 4 A's are accessibility, anonymity, affordability, and aggressiveness. These characteristics are what make it in a class all of its own. The ease of access and ability for this content to be delivered at a moment's notice at such high rates for free is what is so powerful and scary. We are overloaded each day by the images that bombard us, and we, and especially our children, often are defenseless to this onslaught. There's studies that show that children as young as 7 on average, 7 years old, are being exposed to pornography for the first time. We're giving our kids these phones and saying, here you go, we want you to be safe, so we're giving you this phone, yet we're exposing them to a world of danger. We hear in the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Dr. Rossi tells us that the converse to this is implied. Those who are not pure in heart may not see God. Once we see an image, it's really hard to unsee it. Whether it's a pornographic image, maybe a scary movie, violence. There's some things that we either want to delay our kids from seeing as much as possible because maybe it's inevitable in this day and age for our kids to see these things. And for us adults, if we have seen them, how hard is it for us to unsee those things? And then to maybe to be corrupted from the inside without even knowing it. And that purity is lost. So even if we're not looking at pornography specifically, the images that surround us online are harmful too. This right here is the same woman on the left and the right. The woman on the right is her just naturally, and on the left, it's her after being photoshopped. And this is an example. There's a video online produced by Dove, the beauty company, and it goes through the photo shoot and into photoshopping of her to show how we're manipulated by the images that we see online. And this technique is used time and time again in magazines and in online realm of how we're deceived. And you can, I see someone doing it, if you want to look at the left and the right. I mean, when you look at it together, you're like, oh, yeah, it's the same person. But look at the right side first, and you're like, oh, she's really beautiful. And then look at the left, and you're like, oh, wow, that's like just something completely different. And then when you go back to the right side, you're like, oh, wait, like, doesn't even compare. We see these images of perfection posted online every day. But not only are corporations attacking us with these manipulated photoshopped images that are harmful, but the images that friends and family project of themselves can be damaging too, even if they are not intended to be so. As we perceive these images of perfection, We desire for our lives to look like what we see, and when we cannot attain that same level, we get caught up in despair and depression. Instead of simply living our lives as though no one is watching, we actually live our lives because we want everyone to be watching. I'll give you a second to take that one in. Has anyone ever done this? You've done? Does anyone not get this image? Anyone? You've seen it? Does anyone not understand what you're seeing here? So the person taking the picture is holding her two fingers out and pretending that they're her legs at a beach. And there's just a picture of the beach and the ocean in the background, and she's going to post this. I'm assuming it's a she. Or if it's a he, he's got smooth legs. Because she's going to post it online and show her friends what an amazing time she had on vacation. So without even realizing it, we get caught up in a cycle of competition where we work to project a perfected version of our own selves, resulting in influencing others to be afflicted with that same despair. The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. We must remember that our standards for who we are must not be defined by the media who is looking to make a profit, but rather by God who created us and loves us. So not only is the content that we experience online problematic, but the medium itself can be the problem. Digital screens such as televisions, smartphones, tablets, and perhaps more. These hyper-stimulating screens draw the unsuspecting person to them like a fly is drawn to a brilliant light, consumed to the brink of death. Every ding, beep, or buzz that your phone makes letting you know that you have a new message, an incoming call, or a new like on social media is like the bell ringing in a worldwide Pavlovian experiment. Our brains salivate and respond to the chemical response of our activity on the internet and through our phones. The insidiousness employed by technology companies and game makers move us from the realm of this simply being dangerous to it being quite lethal at worst, and to the damaging of relationships at best. Game developers ensure that their games do all of the things that are necessary to want you coming back for more. They are designed to elevate your heart rate, activate your reward centers in your brain, and distort reality to just the right amount to draw you into its own world so you won't want to leave. Annual worldwide revenue for gaming is now over $90 billion. Put another way, if that doesn't mean much to you, we're approaching almost 2 billion users worldwide of video and online games, about 30% of the world, I think. And just about every child in America, 97%, play video games. So what's the big deal? Well, video games are used to treat trauma, to help veterans of war cope with painful wounds, because as it turns out, they're a more effective drug for relieving pain than morphine. Okay. Levels of dopamine in our brains double when we play video games, similar to eating food and having sex. And when it's time for one to choose between a quick fix of a shot of dopamine from gaming or putting in the hard work of being in a relationship, you better believe that a lot of people are going to choose option A and are already doing that. And maybe we've experienced that in our own relationships. I'm sure we know someone addicted to technology. Maybe some of us here are struggling with that in some ways ourselves. No good presentation on social media would be without Kim Kardashian, I think. So there she is. Thank you, Kim. I'm going to call myself out on this, and maybe you all share this too. Do you ever post something on Facebook or Instagram, and then spend the next hour incessantly going back and checking to see how high the like counter has gone? Or what kind of reactions people are getting? Maybe you just needed a little attention, and that's why you did it. You needed that feel-good feeling, and you're not getting it, and then, oh, why aren't people liking it? Blame the algorithm. Maybe we're just impulsively checking our email throughout the day, or whatever social media feed, just scrolling through and seeing what's new, when we could be living in the present moment with the people around us, but instead we're just pulling out our phones 100, 200 or more times a day. That rush and that constant pull, that is addiction. Maybe we're not even aware it's happening. How do we see these cycles of addiction play out in our own lives and in our friends' and families' lives? So we've skimmed the surface a little bit, and now we're going to move on to the social effects. So this right here is Sherry Turkle, Turkle, Sherry Turkle. She is the director of the MIT Initiative on Technology and Self. I recommend her wholeheartedly. She comes at it from an academic research point of view. She doesn't deal with the theology at all, but she analyzes how we've used technology over the past 40 years. She says, my position is not anti-technology. It's pro-conversation. To be more mindful of when a text is the right mode and when a conversation is really what we need. That face-to-face conversation is where empathy grows, and it's where intimacy grows. Sounds pretty orthodox to me. Think of the last time you sat down to dinner with your family or friends, or you were out and saw a couple or a group of people sitting together. Was technology present? Were they engaged or unengaged? Were they aware of one another, or were they completely in their own worlds? Here we have a scene from the TV show Modern Family. This is from a number of years ago. We see this example time and again of a gathering of people where a smartphone interferes with the group's ability to be present with one another. Do we as families gather together anymore for meals or to socialize? Haley, the older sister in this scene, after the mom has been screaming at all of them to put their technology down, she turns and says, well, at least we're sitting together. I mean, that's our new bar. That's our new standard. Well, at least we're sitting together. But we don't care that anyone else is there. Technology, time and again, creates division socially by interfering with relationship. All right. Who here growing up ever had to call a friend's house on their friend's house phone and first had to talk to their parents? Has anyone not had that experience? Never had to do that? Yeah. So only a couple here have never had that experience, but indulge me for a second. Teenagers today no longer will have this chance, though it seems like such a trivial example. They're never going to have this chance to develop key social and communication skills, once learned by simply calling a friend's house. So what would happen? Could you just pick up your phone and be like, all right, time to talk to my friend? What would you have to do before you even picked up the phone? Mom, can I use the phone? You weren't completely free. You were subject to other people's rules. Then what happened? Remember the number. That's good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Then what? Introduce, yes, because the friend didn't answer. Mom or dad or a sibling or someone answered. You had to introduce yourself. You had to talk like an adult to another adult, or you had to learn very quickly some respect towards elders. A lot of stuff was happening. A lot of stuff which you weren't even aware was happening, but lessons were being learned. And teenagers today aren't getting that experience. Instead, today, and same for all of us, we take the path of least resistance. We don't call each other on the phone anymore. We send a photo. We send an emoji. Because it's so easy to do that now. We don't even have to speak in full sentences. My father, I'll call him out on this. My father assigns every text message love, comma, DAD, all in caps. Like, it's the sweetest thing, right? But I'm like, Dad, you don't need to do this. You don't. I know it's you, first of all. I know, like, I see like your number, your name's stored in the phone. You don't need to do that. But like, that's like he wants to like sign off, right? Or like even with emails, like if you're too formal in an email now, like you get criticized. But we've lost some ways in which we communicate. It's de-evolved. And what does that mean for the future? Social media. This is a Banksy or Banksy-esque street art. The little kid's not getting any likes. So sad. Our potential to connect with people around the world has never been greater in human history than it is right at this moment, right now. Yet in many ways, we lead a more disconnected life than any of our ancestors ever did. This feeling of disconnection can leave us feeling utterly alone. And here's one of Sherry Turkle's books. It's called Alone Together. It's certainly how many of us feel. The tagline on the book is why we expect more from technology and less from each other. Maybe social media is the origin of these feelings, or maybe it just perpetuates and exacerbates it. I want to reiterate, I'm not anti-technology. But when we embrace science and technology without meaning, faith, beauty, and wonder to balance it out, people can be left feeling utterly alone. We see this in examples in our schools where cyberbullying takes place over social media. And maybe we have examples in our own lives. Hopefully we don't, but maybe there are, where kids are cyberbullied and they can never escape it because when they leave their schools, they're at home and they're still on social media. And they're feeling that onslaught even in the home, which at one point was a safe haven. And we see time and time again of young people taking their lives because of this feeling of being all alone. So social media can be used for strengthening or developing relationships, but it can also be used to divide. So, hello 911? Yeah, there's people fighting on Facebook, and they're using all caps now. All caps, the universal symbol of dads or of screaming, I guess. Yeah. So generally, we friend and follow people who we like or who we know already, with whom we have similar interests, etc. We don't often friend our enemies, even though I think we're called to that as Christians, to love our enemies. We don't friend those of differing political mindsets, especially in this current climate. With people we disagree, with whom we disagree. It feels good to surround ourselves with people who are like-minded. So what happens when we disagree with someone? We don't have a healthy civil conversation and agree to be friends at the end of it. We yell, we ignore, we unfriend, we unfollow. Maybe we disown a person in real life because we disagree with them. Maybe it even leads to divorce. I'll argue for certain online and even in our offline world, we have lost or we haven't developed the muscles of empathy in our relationships. We are surrounded by a culture where we have the ability to completely tailor and customize our social interactions, soundtracks, and systems of learning from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep day after day, from the moment we are handed a digital device to the moment we die. We get to listen to what we want, decide which news will inform us, select the people in our social circles who will offer their opinions to us, even though we already agree with them. We no longer have to dwell amongst others with differing opinions. And where will that lead us? There's a visual, certainly when it comes to marriage, where this idea that we're these two jagged rocks, and marriage is putting those two rocks into a bag. And over the course of our marriage, we're meant to be shaken around in that bag to the point where at the end of our lives, we take those two rocks out and they're smooth, polished, stones. And that marriage, that relationship, that marital relationship can smooth out all those rough edges because we're not the same. We are uniting in order to grow and to come together. And in doing so, we smooth out those rough points. But we can smooth out those rough points in our other relationships. But when we're always with people with whom we agree, when we never have that conflict, we never have that chance to smooth out. And as robotic and AI technology advances, we will continue to choose technology over other humans for relationships, whether it is for companionship or for things more intimate. This is a scene from the movie Her, H-E-R, where Joaquin Phoenix has a relationship with his operating system. This just came out a few years ago. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Watch the movie if you're interested. It's interesting. Certainly a social commentary. And Jimmy Fallon is also a social commentary. Are we ready to replace the warmth of the human touch with the cold hand of technology? Are we ready to become completely isolated from our neighbors, friends, and family for the sake of self-indulgence? I'll say for sure we're already on that path, and many of us will gladly continue down it. So that takes us to Act 3, the theological and spiritual implications. Where does silence find its place in the age of technology? We read in the Bible that we experience God in the silence of life. The Psalms tell us, "Be still and know that I am God." And if we had more time, I would see if we could practice some silence maybe. But our putting the phones down, that's one good step, I think. In the book of Kings, Elijah encounters God in the silence. It's not in the wind or the earthquake or the fire, but in a still small voice. 1 Kings 19, 11 through 12. Daily, we are surrounded by noise. It may not always be audible, and oftentimes it's not audible at all. Everyone's on their own device there. But it's noise nonetheless. It keeps our minds, bodies, and hearts from being able to experience God in one another. You may have experienced the silence of disconnection before, such as this, where a loved one is consumed by a screen and that the silence there is oh so loud. That destructive silence can prevent real relationship from taking place. But when we take the chance to slow down, disconnect, and fast from the things which distract us, we open ourselves to relationship with God and others in ways that we have forgotten or perhaps previously never knew. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can unplug periodically, find time for silence in our lives. I'm not saying we need to reject technology altogether. We don't need to escape to the woods or to Amish country. But we do need to recognize the noise and find ways to turn down the dial. There's a phrase that goes, "One Christian is no Christian." We are members of the body of Christ, and we are saved in communion, not as individuals. Christ tells us that out of all the commandments of the Old Testament, the greatest two are to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And if we look at Matthew chapter 25, we see the ways in which Christ spells out where we can do that. We attain salvation through posting regularly of our lives on Facebook, getting in heated arguments in message boards. No, of course not. He tells us that we attain salvation through caring for the poor, the hungry, thirsty, sick, naked, and imprisoned. That all comes down to relationship. Relationship with God and relationship with others, which we find in community. So whether we're speaking Latin and look at the Latin origin of communis for things held in common, or the Greek word koinonia, which we use to describe the early church and we use to describe the church today, community is essential. We don't come to church on Sundays or throughout the week for private prayer. Private prayer is for our time at home. We come to gather as a community, to worship together, to dwell together, to break bread together. At one time, the church was the center of all the things we defined as community. Where we lived, where we interacted with our family and friends, where we socialized, where we cared for others. Today, our communities, our priorities and our time is split amongst many communities, 5, 10 or more, which are both locally and globally. Community that goes virtual can be a good thing, but it can also detract. This is a marketing campaign that Facebook is undergoing. You may see these signs in your hometowns. You may see it online. Facebook claims the best part about Facebook isn't on Facebook. Well, despite their claims in this marketing campaign, I believe that the danger with social media is that it's very good at maintaining virtual community, keeping people out of the real world. It's very easy for the face-to-face interactions to be lost. Virtual community can certainly enhance real-world connection, and in other ways, it can be a pretty good replacement, but it can't fully replace it. There's a claim that the internet and social networks bring us closer than we've ever been. By getting connected to someone across the world, what local connections do we lose? Do we spend less time with family and friends and neighbors who are just minutes from us? This face-to-face idea is so important. It's one of those things that's known and understood when we experience it. Certainly we could have all stayed home. I could have recorded a video, other videos could have been recorded, and you could have just sat in your homes on your couches and watched the presentations online. But we would have been missing out on this ability to be together. And it's silly to even suggest it, but it's certainly understood when we're gathered together how important face-to-face is. Being able to look someone in the eyes, see their faces, feel their touch, sense their emotions. Even just looking at a photo of someone changes, like it recalls memories, being able to see that other person. We have this idea, the word prosopon, which we read throughout the Bible. Simply, it means face. It just means face or countenance, to use a fancier term, but it carries a deeper meaning. It's not simply the physical appearance of someone, but the manifestation of who the person is. We read in the book of Numbers, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his countenance to shine upon you and have mercy on you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace." In the book of Corinthians, Paul states, "For God commanded the light to shine out of darkness. He hath shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." In the book and musical Les Mis, we hear that to love another person is to see the face of God. In ancient Greek culture, the word prosopon conveyed the meaning of face or mask, having derived from its use in Greek theater, where actors on stage wore masks to reveal their character and emotional state to the audience. In the online realm, though, we often put on masks not to reveal ourselves, but to hide ourselves from one another. The online realm is replete with these masks. It gives us the ability to do things we never would be doing offline, to access pornography, to have conversations that we wouldn't ever conduct offline, to act in certain ways that just seem unimaginable in the offline world, but we're free to do it online. I'm going to rush a little bit to try to get through the rest. So now we go to Act 4. What next? So St. Paul tells us, also in the book of Corinthians, the 1 Corinthians, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things edify. Let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being." There's certainly a time and place for technology. Ecclesiastes, we read, to everything there is a season and a time and a purpose under heaven. But it requires acquiring the virtues through prayer and fasting of discernment, moderation, and temperance. Are we indulging ourselves in technology, or are we finding times to step away? Moderance, temperance. Father Stephen Freeman, he mentioned his blog earlier today, and in one of his posts, I think a year ago or so, he talks about as we hurtle along at the speed of our internet service, we tend to nurture the habit of brief encounters. We assimilate information that has been formatted for speedy acquisition. The depth of contradiction, paradox, and context tend to be eliminated. The brilliance of the internet is its ability to skim and retrieve. Its genius fails when it comes to understanding and analysis. True human knowing requires the large and slow effort of attention and communion. We could spend a lot of time unpacking that. This two-edged sword of technology is that it allows us to connect with so many so easily, yet there's no guarantee that the depth of absorption matches the breadth of reception. And we measure things nowadays so often quantitatively, not qualitatively. How many likes did we get? How many followers do we have? How many Facebook friends do we have? But wouldn't we rather a small, intimate gathering of friends where we can go deep and really get to know one another? Or are we actually more interested sometimes, and maybe this has been influenced by our modern experience, of saying that we had a gathering of, standing room only in our session, or, 100 people came to my party, or whatever it is. We go for the breadth, not the depth. But when we have a list of 2,500 Facebook friends, but we can't even call on even just one of them when times are tough, what does that mean when we're calling them friends? What's that? Acquaintances, yeah. When we look at fidelity within the context of marriage or a romantic relationship, all that we previously mentioned comes into play. And when we talk about cheating, technology can be the vehicle through which we cheat. Whether we're using an app like Tinder to find someone, or whether we're just using the device itself. The device becomes the object of our affection, where we turn to our phones and devices in the act of cheating when the going gets tough with our real relationship. In the end, when we cross that line in however we use technology, sometimes there's no going back. Sometimes the ones we love will be hurt, and sometimes irreparably. And because technology is so at hand, this is why it's necessary to say it. The accessibility, anonymity, affordability, and aggressiveness of all of these choices is what can lead all of us to points of no return. We must stay vigilant in our ministry and in our relationships to keep the dangers of digital technology at bay. I'm going to end with this one visual. It's a visual which will make sense with the following quote about the narrow gate and the way that is wide. So Christ warns us to enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Relationships are hard work. Relationships are that narrow gate. Community is that narrow gate. And technology certainly can facilitate our ease in life. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time. Open it up to conversation. Questions, comments, disagreements, agreements?
That was awesome.
Thank you. Anyone? Okay, yeah.
We do a really good job of doing commercials for smoking, or some of those images were very compelling. It seems like you see I know that with consumerism, with digital marketing, like companies probably don't want us to be on our phones less.
Mhm.
but there needs to be a line drawn in the sand, and do we do that? Do you think we're going to go there? You think the government's going to say, hey, we got a problem?
I don't think the government will step in, but I think I've been giving talks like this for a few years now, and awareness has gone up dramatically. We're all aware of these problems, and someone commented in the last session, you didn't need to tell us this, like we all know it, right? And I'm sure, right, like we all know this, like we all live these lives. No, it was good feedback. We all know the problems that we're facing, and the awareness is becoming more and more. And I think we're gonna to pump the brakes in the coming years. I think we're gonna all slow down a little bit, or maybe we won't. I don't know. Maybe we're on a bullet train, about to go off a cliff. I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you guys think? Yeah.
Has any of this, I mean, you're the director of Internet Ministries.
Yeah.
So has any of that changed how you're doing your job? Or?
Yeah, we've been aware of this kind of stuff for a while, but obviously, smartphones are 10 years old now, like iPhones at least. BlackBerry's a little older, but yeah, iPhones are only 10 years old, so we weren't even like thinking about some of these things 15 years ago. But we're always aware that when we're working on something, we don't want to make it so compelling that it's just going to keep people hooked. We want people to get back in the real world. We want people to have relationships. We want people to know another person. So we try not to, and it sounds lame. It's like, oh yeah, you're not making your products good enough. But no, like it is a battle. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One thing that we were talking about how it affects children.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting because I've definitely heard that, and I've seen it, but at the same time, I feel like I've noticed it in any age range, because Facebook started with just college age, but then it migrated to, and the majority of people that use it are middle-aged women. I can attest to that. My mom and all her friends, and the interesting is my younger sister, who's 20,
Mm-hmm.
her whole generation grew up with smartphones and technology, but
Mhm.
they actually, her and her friends are the only people I can talk to about this exact stuff, and they don't like it because they actually have awareness that older people
Yeah. Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
all the older people are always telling all of us, oh, kids these days.
But they're doing it just as much. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I feel like maybe that's something that I wish we addressed more, is it can affect anyone.
Absolutely.
Age, because it's what's missing in our lives.
Mhm.
Drugs.
Oh, it absolutely. Yeah, I did. With education, I was talking about kids, but certainly this affects every demographic. And so Sherry Turkle in that book, Alone Together, talks a lot about robotic technology and how we're letting robots take care of our older generations. Like rather than actually caring for our senior citizens, of our parents when they get older, we ship them off, and we've been doing this for years, we ship them off to nursing homes to let the system take care of them, which that in of itself is problematic. But then now that robotic technology is becoming this thing, we'll give them a robotic dog or seal, there's different things, because it's companionship, right? And it's like, oh, well, at least they're not sad when I leave them. But, or maybe, like someone's just on their computer all day long. Like I know my mom plays video games. I'll call her out. She plays video games till like 2 in the morning. Yeah, it's a problem for everyone, for sure. Yeah.
So definitely discernment is a big piece of this, it seems. So I'm just wondering if you have any insights personally to share about some things you find useful when you're evaluating your technology use.
So community is so important. And if I find myself getting isolated by the technology, like the technology can facilitate community. And I'm a bit of an introvert, like I'm kind of like right on the line, and I have a lot of introverted tendencies. But I think for some introverts, like technology is a good facilitator because you don't have to be in a room being like exposed to this like group of people, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You could be in the comfort of your home and have conversations, and that's a great thing. But if I find myself being isolated in ways by the technology, even despite the good side of it, it's like, oh, I need to maybe like change my habits a little. I think community is a good metric. And is Christ present? You know, it seems like a cliche thing to say, but I think there's truth in that. Do we see Christ come through in how we use technology? Certainly some of the things like Christ is not present in online pornography. There's like, there's no chance of that, right? Like, there's no good use of that. But in other things, we need to use some discernment for sure.
Probably have time for just a couple more questions.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Okay. Yeah.
I know I've got a lot of family teachers, and one thing they've recently done is, in the past, when they're taking time away from the studies to incorporate what's called maker spaces, which is like Lincoln Logs Connect.
Yeah.
Because the kids aren't getting that at home. They're being shoved in front of screens to entertain them, so they're not using their hands and interacting with the
That's
world.
great. Yeah.
And it really harms them developmentally.
Mhm.
Schools are now taking part of the time they have the kids to allow them to have that kind of play area.
Yeah.
And that's then taking away time from studying.
That's great. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you cultivate face-to-face community in a universe, basically, that's looking at their phone? Like, how do you get people to look up? How do you create that in a
So I'll pull from an example that we're doing at my parish. So my parish, does anyone know about what's called the Telos Project? Some of you are familiar with that. For those of you who aren't, there are a number of parishes that were selected around the country. It's a grant that was given by the Lilly Foundation. Thank you, Indianapolis, if any of you are from Indiana here. The Lilly Foundation is this huge foundation that gives money to religious works. And they're doing this study of young adult ministry. And so a bunch of seminaries around the country were given this, and then all the seminaries picked different parishes. So the Holy Cross, the Greek Orthodox Seminary in Boston, chose my parish and maybe some of your parishes. One here in Atlanta, St. John's, was chosen, and a few others around the country. And they're giving us money to try different things with young adult ministry. So I have a list of like 200 young adults that have connected through our parish at one point or another. But they said, have conversations. Like, here's $500, have some conversations. So what did we do? We called up people. We said, parish council member, come and have coffee with this young adult. Like, here's $10, go grab a coffee and have a conversation. Just like force that conversation to happen. And after we had a few of those, like the young adults were blown away. They'd come back to our meeting and they were like, oh my God, people were saying hi to me. Like, I walk into church and like this person who I knew of but never interacted before, like all of a sudden these like connections were being made. Sometimes you have to force the, just break away from it and just say like, let's go back to something that we would have done normally to have, facilitate a relationship.
Probably have time for one more question.
Okay, great. I don't know if that answers it, but that's just like an idea, yeah.
I started watching with just an example. So a year ago, I started working in this new place.
Okay.
And people there are kind of workaholics.
Mm.
And two of us were new to the place. And what we noticed is that when we go to the place in the morning, nobody says good morning. Nobody says hi. So we decided that just for 5 minutes in the morning, everybody would just turn around, leave the computers, and just say good morning to each other and actually mean it.
Yeah.
And honestly, we did not like each other at the beginning. Like, literally.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm not going to go hang out with these guys. We don't even say good morning to each other.
Yeah.
So now we actually...
And it changed it, yeah.
We know stuff about each other. So it was just about 5 minutes in the morning.
That's great. Yeah, it just takes a simple act to change the direction of the trajectory. You just like hit it a little bit and then it twists and then, you go ahead. Yeah, no, that's great. That's really great. Could we do a couple more?
Probably have one more.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. I work in tech. I
Okay.
build apps for a living.
Oh, great, okay.
I just want to make it this kind of insight and perspective here is it kind of reminds me as I've been working the last 3 years doing this. Like, I love this, like the phone. I love the phone. I love that I can push the button and see my mom's face who lives in California. Like,
Yeah.
It's great. But at the same time, the people I work with, we use it less than we did when we started, it seems. It's like when I worked in an ice cream shop in college, I never ate less ice cream than I did when I worked in that ice cream
Yeah.
so maybe that'd be interesting to people that build it kind of keep it at an arm's length more than it seems
other people.
That's great. That's good insight. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Alex?
When I opened myself up to finding community, that was actually how I found a ton of friends and actually how I found my spouse. So I was going to different cities. I'm a nurse, and so I had freedom, from Wednesday to Wednesday. And so I found out where I was in the hospital, I couldn't find a true Christian friend, much less Orthodox friend. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go to communities that have other Orthodox people in them where they're very prominent, and I'm going to find friends. And it's very interesting as an adult to go seeking friends. So I went out to San Francisco, and I made a ton of friends there. And they taught me something. It's PLA instead of PLN. It's post-liturgical adventures. So instead of lying down and sleeping because you stayed up until 3 in the morning and then you showed up an hour late for church, so you missed communion, and you go home for a nap, you go out and you find people at your church and you say, hey, my name is so-and-so, let's go have a coffee, let's go get food together. And that's actually how I met my husband, is like being brave enough to go and find people to make friends with. That's actually how I met you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
met
Yeah.
a ton of
Yeah.
my friends.
Yeah.
And it was putting away my selfish need for sleep, and trust me, I need sleep. I work the night shift. But it's allowing yourself, I think, to be vulnerable and say, I am new to this space. I need friends. I need community.
Yeah.
And I think that when you recognize that, you're going to want to put your phone down. I didn't have most photos from, a lot of those friendships that I made. But it's all in here.
Yeah.
And it's in here.
That's great. Yeah.
Let's give Jamil
That's good. Thank you.
First, if you go down this stairwell that you came up for the breakout, go down in the same room we were in this morning. We'll have Vespers. You have about a 10-minute break, and we'll see you in that room.
Well, what's like maybe 3 things you could do